Well, I think it's a big learning process, and as I say, it's different for everyone. One thing that really resonates with me, and I hadn't heard this at the beginning, and wish I had, and that is the fact that a blank sheet isn't going to do you any good. So you can't edit a blank paper. You have to start somewhere. So, and I think that's the lesson for life in general. If there's something in life you want to do, you have to go out there and do it. I mean, it's that simple, really. So you have to start with, as I said, there needs to be a spark, there needs to be an idea, something which maybe comes from your background experience or something that you've heard about or watched or seen or whatever. So you take that one little thing, that's your start. Get it down on paper. Maybe it's part of a list of just some ideas. Maybe it starts with a sentence, whatever, but you need to start somewhere. So get something down, get some ideas up here, get them down on paper, make a start. So whatever you want to do, go ahead and just plunge in there and start, right? Get a start on it. So that would be the advice I would give to anybody starting out writing anything at all.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have another amazing author with me here on the podcast. And I just love talking to authors, getting some insight into how they do their craft. And my guest today, Ivanka Fear, is on, and she has an amazing background, connections here in Canada, which makes me happy. And I'm really happy to have her on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you here, Ivanka. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks, Dave, for having me.
This is exciting. So, okay, I got to ask right off the bat, do you do a lot of podcast interviews?
This is my first, actually.
Oh, come on. We got to have some kind of award or something. I gotta come up with something that I can send to my first-time guests. I have a lot of great authors on the show, first time ever on a podcast. Welcome. Glad to have you here and excited to talk a little bit about your background. I have your website up on the screen as we're chatting. I love the website. I love all the water and the ocean going on in the background. It's a great website. Can you tell us a little bit about your website just off the top as we start the conversation?
Sure. Well, I'm not very technologically savvy. So for me to create my own website took a lot of trial and error. And I wanted it to become something that I'd be happy with in terms of it reflected who I am, not just necessarily professional, which maybe it's not as professional looking as it would be if I'd hired someone, but it's a reflection of me and who I am. So therefore we have the cat and we have the water, things that are about me.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm going across all the options here. I see your playlist of your books. I see poetry and stories, your blog. What kind of things can we find here when we come to your website that you would send people to maybe first if they're coming here for the first time?
Okay, well, I think the first thing you see when you get onto the website, you're going to be asked to subscribe to my newsletter. So you can either choose to, put in your email, and I don't do it too often. I've been doing it once quarterly, once a season, beginning of the season usually. And so you can keep up with the things that I've been doing in terms of writing and the things that are inspiring me. And after that, you can either, register for that, or you can click the X and go right to my website. And on the website, it will tell about my book. There's a little bit about me. There's a trailer at the end of the first page about the book, which I created, which I really like. It gives you a 2-minute synopsis of what's going to happen in the story.
Nice.
And then the other things on there that I would direct people to are, if you're interested in reading more about the things that I'm reading, there's the blog section, which has right now, all it has is my book reviews, books that I've read in the last couple of months probably, but I'm hoping to put other articles or other bits of information on there as well as I go along on the blog. The poems and short stories that I've written, I have links to them there, the magazines that, online magazines, or in some cases there isn't a link, but there's a mention of a story in a magazine where it was published.
Nice. Yeah, I'm on that one right now. I can see a ton. It's amazing. There's like a long list here.
So I've written a lot. Before I wrote the novel, obviously, I wrote a lot of poetry and a lot of short stories and published that. And that's how I got the start into the career of being an author. The reviews have come just recently. I've always loved to read, but I thought as a new author myself, I like to get on to, say it's Google, the Goodreads or on Amazon, and to see what are other people thinking about my book when they've read it. And so I thought, well, if I want to see what people think of my work, I'm sure that I can return that favor to other authors as well. So now instead of just reading the book, I will go on and give it a star review, a 4 or 5 star review. I tend to not give it a low review. If there's something I don't like, I generally don't read it. So I'll start, and if I'm not enjoying it after a while, I try to give it a fair try. But if I'm not enjoying it after a while, rather than force myself through it and then say, oh, this is a 1 or 2 star book, I just don't bother usually. So the books
Okay.
that I have on there are books I've recommended that are 4 or 5 star reviews.
Have you ever heard back from any of these authors as far as your reviews?
Well, some of the authors are people who I would know through my agent or through my own publisher.
Okay,
So they're aware that I've given them a review. And they
nice.
often will return the favor, which is nice as well.
It's a great idea. Don't think I've seen this on any other author site. So congratulations. This is unique to me. Um, any tips for people leaving reviews from your perspective on how we can be, how our reviews can be helpful to an author instead of just giving like good book, like 2-word responses? How can we be more meaningful in our reviews?
Well, some of the reviews tend to be longer, and they're talking more about the plot of the book or about the characters, and I tend to do that as well when I'm writing a review. I like to give a little bit of to the reader so that they know, what's this book going to be about? Is it a book that I'm going to be interested in, regardless of what the reviewer has to say? So you want some of that, but you don't want it to be too lengthy.
Yeah.
But what you do want to hear is, what did they think of overall? Was it something that kept them reading? Was it something where they could relate to the main character? And was it something that was a quick, easy read, or something that they struggled through to read? And if they did struggle through it, and if they had some hardship with it or something they didn't like, and if you're going to give a 1 or 2 star review, don't just say, okay, it's a 1 or 2 star book,
Yeah.
but give your reasons for that. So as an author, when I see that, well, first of all, you kind of get your back up and you're like, oh no, if they didn't like it, it's their problem. They didn't like it. It's not, it's the author's problem, because you wrote this and you wanted to connect with your reader, obviously didn't with that reader. So you
Mhm.
want a reason. So if it's not something that there was something in there they didn't enjoy, then you want to know that so
Yeah.
that you can improve for the next time.
Yeah. And
I
that's
would
the
suggest
idea,
that.
right?
Tell the
Yeah.
things that you liked. Did you connect with the character? Hopefully, did it keep you reading? But if not, why not? What was the problem?
Yeah. Because that's information that the author, especially if you're a new author,
Mhm.
that you could really use to help shape your future writing. I actually had an author come on and he got a review that he struggled with because when he wrote his first book, his first novel, he really wanted to do a really slow burn at the beginning of the novel to set the world and create the world. And it was really kind of just, he purposely wrote to be really slow. And then the story picks up from there. But he purposely did that as he wanted to try it. And one of his lowest star reviews was that it was too slow in the beginning. And he's like, that's exactly what I was trying to do, but it didn't translate well to the reader from his perspective. What he was trying to do didn't really work. So his next book, he went completely opposite and started with a bang and got different feedback. So again, it's kind of how you approach your writing. And some people are going to love your book. Some people might not. But if you can take some of the learnings that you get through your reviews, I think that'll help make you a better writer.
Right, exactly. And yeah, that's what I would say, is to accept those low reviews and try to learn something from that. And also to remember, it's not always the reader or the author. Sometimes it's just not a good fit. As an author, as you said, that author got across what they wanted to get across with a slow burn start. It wasn't necessarily what that reader was looking for.
Right.
So maybe it wasn't a fault of either reader or author. It was just not the right book for that reader.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Not everybody likes the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So you have, as an author, you need to accept that. Not everyone's going to love the book, but if they have something positive to say, that's great. If not, maybe a suggestion that can help you with the next bit of writing that you do.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. So we mentioned before we hit record, you were out just recently promoting the book and meeting other authors and readers. Tell me, what kind of things are you doing to promote your book and the release of the book and making connections with the community, with the writers around you and the reading public? What kind of things would you suggest, or what are you trying?
Well, I've spent the last few months since I should have started this sooner, but my book wasn't quite released when it was supposed to be released, and I wasn't exactly sure when it would be. It was a month late. So I didn't, being a first time author, I didn't really know that you should start that process way ahead of the time that the book is published. So I'm a little behind that way in terms of promoting. So the last few months since it's been out, I've been doing a lot of online things where it's interviews, online interviews with sometimes other authors, other writers. Been doing some blogs. This is my first podcast, as I mentioned. Hopefully I'll be doing some more of those. Lots of online social engagement through social media posts, the website, newsletters. And then there's the other part now, and thank goodness we're able to get out now and meet with people face to face. There's the other part where I've done a couple of markets and been so happy to actually meet people who wanted to read my book. And that's just so exciting to get out there and meet these people who are often writers themselves or aspiring writers as well. So I've done a few of those. I've started small with a friend invited me to a book club as the author. So that was a new experience because I've done book clubs before, but not as the author of the book that was being studied or being talked about. And the next thing that I have coming up is I have a book fair I'm going to in July, and then I have a couple of book signings at Indigo this summer as well. One of the biggest things that I've done happened a few weeks ago. I went to New York City, to Times Square, and that was such a major experience as a new author. I hadn't been sure that I would go. At first, my thought was, oh no, I don't want to be in front of a big crowd of people. Get on a plane, even for me, isn't something I like to do. So traveling to a big city like that I don't think I want to do that. And I'm so glad that I went ahead and did it. As a debut author, I signed up for International Thriller Writers. And as part of that, with my novel just coming out, being a debut author, they have a program for debut authors. And part of that program is you have the opportunity to go to New York to the Thriller Fest, which is their big yearly convention. And you get to go to the debut breakfast for the debut author's breakfast. And you have to do a little speech about just a 1-minute speech, but still it's a little nerve wracking when you're in front of all these other readers, authors, people in the publishing industry. So you have to tell about yourself and your book. And it was amazing to meet all the people there and to be part of that. And then there was the book signing room after that. So to be amongst all these, not only your peers who are starting out as authors or potential readers, but to be with these other authors who are famous best-selling authors and to sit in on their panels and to listen to them talk about their writing and their writing process was just amazing. So that would be the biggest thing that I've done so far.
That's amazing. And I love that you're getting recognition for your work, because I think when I talk to authors on the podcast, a lot of them mention that a lot of their writing time is spent alone and in kind of in solitude, and they're kind of yearning for that opportunity to connect with other authors and connect with their audience and their readers. But it's that sitting down to write every day and working on the book and longing for the day when they can have that interaction. Did you have anybody kind of with you during the writing process, or did you do this on your own?
I was very fortunate. My husband is my biggest supporter. So when I started writing, it was with a poem, and it was just for myself. It was a hobby, just something that I wanted to do or felt I needed to do. And he said, after I'd written a few, he said, you should try to get these published. So he's been my biggest, always been there for me, biggest supporter, reading everything that I write, encouraging me and giving me ideas with my work as well. So I haven't had to work in solitude, but you're right. Being a writer is very much a solitary profession. Most of the time you're sitting there and you're at whether it's with a pen or paper, with your computer, your laptop, you're sitting there by yourself and you're writing things. So during COVID, that was actually a time when I'm sure that many people were able to take that opportunity to do the writing that they had thought, oh, someday I'd like to do this. And now with us being forced to be home alone or with our families, we had a couple of years of sort of downtime with an opportunity to do that. So I'm sure a lot of people took that opportunity to work on their writing or to start their writing career. For me, it had started before COVID, my career, but during that time, it was an opportunity really I'm sitting down, I'm writing, but there's really nowhere else I need to be right now.
Yeah.
So, or nowhere else I can be. So this is a good time to work on the writing. But saying that, after 2 years of solitude and writing by yourself, it's great to be able to get out and to talk to other people,
Yeah.
to meet with other writers. So definitely getting away from the social media and the sitting down and doing that day-to-day writing, and actually speaking to readers and writers in person, I'm finding to be these last few months a very enjoyable experience.
I'm also quite fascinated to find out your process for writing. Do you write every day? Do you have a certain minimum number of words you like to write? Can you kind of give us some behind the scenes to your writing process?
I'm one of those people they call a pantser. So there are plotters who have to have everything planned out. And then there are people like me who just have to be inspired and sit down and just go for it and see what happens. So that's me. So I don't have a time set aside. I don't have an outline. Um, I'm not one of those people that I could sit down and do some on-demand writing. Like, this is your hour. You need to produce this and do a good job of it in this amount of time.
Right.
I need to have an idea, some inspiration, the desire to sit down and write. So for me, it's not any particular time. It's whenever that inspiration strikes. So
Okay.
it could be middle of the night.
Yeah.
It's not 9 to 5.
No.
It can be any time. Unfortunately, often it is at an inopportune time, like midnight, 1 o'clock, when I should be sleeping. I'm like, oh, I got this great idea. I got to get that written down. So it's not always convenient. So my writing process is basically, I will start with, I need a spark. I need an idea, something that inspires me. And that can come from anywhere in life. It can be an experience, or, something that I've heard or read, something I've, could be from TV or a book, not necessarily an experience I've had, or it could be something that makes me think, oh, okay, this could lead to a story.
Mhm.
And once I have that idea, then there needs to be a problem around that idea to make it a story that's interesting.
Yep.
And I need to have a character. So the main character I build in my mind. First, I build this character up. And once I have that all in my mind, here's the spark, the idea. This is the problem. I have a main character and a couple of other characters I'm going to put into this character's life. And let's see how they deal with the problem that I've given them. So then once I have that in my mind, I'll sit down and I'll just start to write and see where that takes me. And then, of course, as I'm going along, things start to roll. One thing leads to another.
Yeah.
And then inevitably there'll be a spot where I'm stuck. Okay, I have no idea what's going to happen next. So at that point, it's either, you need to stop the writing and just give it some thought. Okay, what are the potential places that this could go to? What could the character do next? What could the character say? And often those ideas come at times where I'm out for a walk or just doing some household chores. I'll get an idea, and then what I do is I'll just jot it down. I'll just do it usually I do it on my computer, my laptop. But I'll just put a point form list of things. Here's an idea. This might happen sometime in the story. Might not fit in there. Here's another idea. So I just have a list. It's not an outline, but it's a list of potential ideas. Where could the story go? What could happen to the character next? What could they do? So I can refer to that. So when I'm stuck, if I can go back to my list and there's something there, I'm like, oh, okay, now this is going to happen. Or also I'll be stuck and then I'll ask my husband, I have no idea what's the character going to do. And he'll say something sometimes very, very silly. And I'll be like, no, there's no way that is going to happen in this book. It definitely happened with this first book, The Deadline. And then I start thinking about it and like, oh, well, I can make that work. I can change that around. And I guess that's the thing. When you have an idea, that doesn't mean it's set in stone. You can change it up, make it what it needs to be to fit in with your story, right?
Nice. So when your husband throws an idea out like that, does he get any kind of financial compensation for his ideas, or is that not part of the deal?
Yeah, he's my PR person as well, and right now he's not getting any pay for any of that. No, it's
Okay.
just he's just along for the ride.
Good. Well, he asked me to ask that question, just so you know. No, I'm making that up. When you're creating your book, are you writing in like a linear fashion? Are you starting at chapter 1 and going to chapter 2? Because I had an author come on recently and they write in reverse. They have the end
Interesting.
and then they rewrite backwards to the beginning. so that they know where their character is going to end up. And I thought that was unique. I didn't really realize that was a way to do it. I guess you can do it any way you want, but
Yeah.
what's your process that way?
I tend to start at the beginning with the first chapter and roll along. I think I had with my first book, I think that what I did was I got to a certain point, and it's that point where you're kind of stuck, but you know what happens later. So leave that part, go on, write the next three, write the last 3/4 of the book if you can, and then try to piece it together, go back to it. So I think I've done that, but generally I would start at the beginning and it just kind of flows and rolls along from beginning to the end. But saying that, I also do a lot of flashbacks in the character's life. So they'll be rolling along and then all of a sudden it's something in the past has happened.
Okay. Which gives you some context for the story, right?
So for me, it's chapter 1 right through the end usually.
Okay.
But there is a lot of, in the book, there's a lot of this is in the past and now it's present. And then it's from the far past, can be all over the place that way as well.
I had one author on recently and she said that at one point she got stuck and it was like her character reached out to her and started having a conversation with her. And she said it was the most unique thing ever because she got direction from the character that she was building to kind of go in a different direction than she was planning. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. When your character talks back to you and you're having a conversation, was anything like that in your journey?
I don't think I talk to my character, but my character talks to the other characters in my head. So, so while I'm doing other things, I'm constantly in this other world. So it's always in the back of my mind here. I'm in the other person's world, my main character's world. And they're not talking to me directly, but they are having a conversation, maybe an internal, monologue with themselves, thinking something over, or they're talking to some other characters in the book. So that way, when I do go back to the writing, and if I've been in a spot where I'm stuck, then I can pick up on that. And when she was thinking this, or she was just having a conversation with so-and-so about something, and that can fit in here somewhere. Maybe not right now, but maybe that's one of those things I jot down on my list of things to come to later, possibly.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's always there. It's always there in my mind, what my character is thinking or what they're saying to someone else, but not necessarily directly to me.
Amazing. I love it. I love the insight. This helps me so much. I have never written a book, so I'm super curious about everything. And that's what I love about this podcast is I get to talk to authors and find out what works for you. And then people listening as well, maybe they're just starting to write and they have no idea what to do next. So just hearing your process might be the impetus for them to start because now they have a plan just listening to you. So thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, I'm sure everyone has a different process.
Yeah.
What works for one doesn't work for another. You just have to figure out what is working for you. So, as I say, some people have to write everything down and then go to the writing once everything's in place. And they know exactly what's going to happen. But I don't do that. I just have things come to me and sort of go along with the flow, and my characters will tell me if it needs to go in this direction or that. And I actually did start with this book. I did try to do, this isn't the first book I wrote, it's the first that's published, but the order of this series isn't the way I wrote it. So the first book I wrote will actually be the 4th published. This one that's first published is the 4th book I wrote. So my publisher thought it would make more sense if we wrote these things chronologically in a series rather than just the way they popped into my head. So my character's story to me started when she was later on in life, when she was middle-aged. And then there was a sequel to that. But then I thought, her story really started way back here. Like, how did she get to this point? There's something got her to this point. So then I backtracked and wrote some prequels. So The Dead Lie is actually a prequel to the actual novel that I wrote first. So with this one being my 4th one, I thought, why not try a different process? And I'd done a lot of reading about how to write a book. And it seemed that there was sort of like what do you call that? No, an outline of how to write a book, I guess. You do this first, then you do this and so on. And there are different parts to a novel. Yeah. So I tried that and I had all my ideas in place. And then I tried to slot in ideas and, okay, this should be here and that should be there. And everything in my little boxes. And then I set out to write the story. And as I did that, my characters didn't cooperate. So, next you need to do this. And I try to write that. And then my character would go off and do something that was not in any of the boxes. And so I was like, okay, well, that can't work because next you need to do this. And you haven't done this to get to that point. So I found that writing that outline wasn't my way of writing, but it works for a lot of people. So I think everybody has to, through trial and error, you have to find what works for you.
Yeah. So let's go into the dead lie. Let's kind of unpack a little bit for this for readers that haven't purchased the book yet. They're going to after hearing you on the podcast. What are we going to find here? Can you kind of give us the synopsis of the book?
Well, the story's about a young girl or a young woman named Lana. So her story actually starts even before the first book, but in the story, she's a young woman with a family. She has a background, something traumatic has happened in her past, something that she also contributed to. She's done a terrible thing. So this incident in the past is something that she's had to run from. She can't go back and change it. There's nothing she can do about it. What's done is done. So she's had to go forward. So she, as a young girl, she was 18, 19 when this traumatic incident happened. She needed to leave her past behind. So she changed her name. She moved away. She had a whole new identity. So this is now 11 years after that traumatic event. And she is starting to think, well, I'd like my life back. And so she's thinking maybe 11 years is enough of a, time that I could go back and visit my parents and go back to my old neighborhood and not have to live this kind of life where I'm always on the run or always hiding at least. Mm-hmm. So this is where this picks up. She goes back home and these mishaps happen to her, which she thinks at first are a coincidence, or she wants to believe it's a coincidence. She's led, as a young woman, she's led a fairly sheltered life. So she's been protected. She's naive, not experienced in the way of the world. And when this traumatic event happens and she has to go on the run, it changes her life forever. She can never go back. But when she does go back, that's what she discovers is you can't go back. You can't go back to the past. And if you do, there are some repercussions from that. So when she goes back, it turns out that something terrible happens. Her parents die in a car accident. And her first thought is that it's her fault. Whatever she had done in the past has somehow come back to haunt her. And the result is that her parents have been taken from her. In not believing that it was an accident, and being nosy, that's the other part of her character is she's innocent and doesn't have a lot of life experiences, but she's very nosy. And this is what makes her in the future an amateur sleuth, is her ability to figure things out, to get to the bottom of things. Mm-hmm. So she wants to know, why did my parents die in this accident? Is it just an accident, or is it because of me? Did something else happen? Why did this happen? So as she's trying to figure out if it's her fault or just an accident, she discovers something about her parents. So she's not the only one with a past. Her parents also have a secret that they've been keeping and a past that she needs to unravel. So in deciding to get to the bottom of her parents' history, she decides to travel back to their hometown, which is she lives in Hamilton.
Yeah.
Her parents live in Hamilton. That's where she's from. But she has moved up north with her young kids and her husband since that traumatic event. So now from Hamilton, right after the funeral, she decides that she's going to go and find out more about her parents and to see, do the secrets that they've kept and the lies that they've told her, this past history that she was unaware of, did that somehow contribute to their deaths? So she goes to Croatia, which is their hometown, meets up with her grandma and some other relatives she hadn't known that she had, knocks on doors, tries to find out more about her mom and dad and if that had any connection to what happened to them. During the process, there's a lot of sightseeing because, her grandma's like, well, let's go do this while you're here. And so there's a lot of, my husband called it a travel log. So a lot of my readers really enjoyed that. They liked being immersed into the Croatian experience, the culture and the sightseeing. So that's a big part of the book as well. She goes there and she's, even though she's mourning, she's on a sightseeing tour of sorts, I guess you'd call it. But her main reason for being there is to discover what happened to her parents, to find out more about her family that she didn't know she had, and also to protect her own husband and her young children, because whatever happened to her parents, she's worried that if it's the result of her actions from something she did 11 years ago, could this come back on her family now? Will it be after her children, after her husband and her children, not just her? Maybe her parents were the start of it. So she's trying to figure out what happened to them so that she can protect her family. And that's really what drives her, is protecting her family, especially her children, from whatever has caused her parents' death or whoever might be after her. So that's her
Wow.
motivation.
Yeah, and I'm reading along as you're talking on your website, and a little bit more information there too. And there's a there's a lot going on in this story. I love this. It's great.
Well, there's a lot of I'd call it revelations. She learns a lot about herself, about her family. So there's a lot of twists and turns in the book. And that's the sort of thing I love to read. So of course it was the type of thing I decided I should write. So as you're going along, you're like, oh wow, there's something new. And then it will take kind of a bit of a turn or a twist where there's something new gets revealed that is a bit of a surprise. And even as you get towards the end of the book, because it's a series and there's so much more of her life and her story to be told, I've left it open so that this story, the particular story, is finished. Each book is a standalone in the fact that you could pick it up and read it on its own.
Okay.
But it continues on. So if you start from the beginning and you flow all the way through it, it tells her more and more about her story. And in each case, something new comes up so that she's in a new dangerous situation that she needs to work through.
Amazing.
And she learns things along the way that she didn't know, as well as the reader.
Nice. I think you mentioned this already. I just want to go back to it. How many books total are going to be in this set?
So I have in the series, I have 5.
Okay.
5 books in this. It's the Blue Water Mystery Series. There are 5 books in this series.
Okay.
So in the first one here, she's 29 going on 30. The next book is a year later. She goes back home, which is up north to a small town where she's moved with her husband and family, her young kids. That's where she's lived the last 11 years, 12 years in the next book. So there she has a new mystery to solve. So this first book, whatever's happened there, that mystery's been solved, her parents and what happened to them. The second book is a new mystery. It's about her husband's receptionist who went missing. What happened to her?
Oh.
So being nosy and always thinking, does it have something to do with me? Because it's my husband, connected to him. Is it connected to me, my family? So in the back of her mind, she's always worried that she's in danger, that her family's in danger, and somehow is connected with her. So when her husband's receptionist goes missing, obviously she wants to investigate that because she's worried it has something to do with her. On the other hand, being a part-time reporter in her small town and being nosy and needing to know everything, that also drives her. And as well, she wants to, of course, get her husband's receptionist back. So she's wanting to do a good thing.
Yeah.
And that's part of her story, is her character arc is redemption. She started off young in life. Something terrible has happened to her. She's made a bad decision about what happened to her, done a terrible thing, can't change it. But going forward, she can do good. She can protect her family. She can try to help other people. So as she goes along and she's solving other mysteries, she's doing it to help other people, as well as always, of course, it's self-preservation. She does want to protect herself and her family, but she is trying to do good in the world. So her future seems to be that murder shows up on her doorstep all the time, and she's always trying to solve the mysteries.
Amazing. As an author, do you find yourself putting yourself into your characters to some degree? Is there little pieces of you scattered through the narrative?
Oh, I would say definitely. I think with my main characters, I put some part of myself in there, and I think that's what helps it to become a little more realistic.
Yeah.
So the character, she has issues with being on a plane, just like I do, being closed in, claustrophobia, fear of heights, this sort of thing. And she's an introvert. So I put parts of myself into that. She's and yet being an introvert, as I said, she's nosy and she needs to know what's going on. So she's out there trying to solve all these mysteries, all these puzzles, and very protective of her family. So I'd say, yes, there are definitely parts of me in my main character.
Amazing. Amazing. So when you're writing this many books in a series, do you have them all kind of in working status at the same time? Or are you just focused on one at a time and you're just because I could just picture there's going to be something, even though they're standalone books, there's going to be something in book one that's going to show up over maybe book three, and there's going to be a little bit of an overlap in the story. So you kind of have to build the whole world across the entire series, or are they completely separate? Can you kind of explain how that works?
Well, my writing is very scattered. So
Okay.
I don't think there was any big plan. There was
Okay.
never even a plan to make a series out of it. The whole thing started with a short story. And the idea for the short story started with something. And this is where, as new writers, take those little things that happen to you every day, whether they happen to you or you hear about them from somewhere, take every little thing and see if you can build something out of that. So for me, it was, and I'm not sure if it really happened or not, it was a phone call. So I woke up, there was a phone call, or it was a dream. I honestly don't know if it was real or still a fragment of the dream. Woke up, there's a phone call asking if I would be interested in colored diamonds. And I'd never heard of colored diamonds, but I thought, that's strange. Why did I get this phone call? And maybe I can make something out of this. So I started to do some research about colored diamonds. And in that research, the idea came to me of a young woman who gets herself into trouble because she involves herself with, and it wasn't the idea of colored diamonds isn't in the story, but the story came from that, if that makes sense.
Oh,
She gets
okay.
herself involved with a criminal family. That's what happens. And in the short story, it does start with the diamonds. Like there are diamonds in the story. They're not the biggest part of the story, but there's something about diamonds in there. And so it became a short story about a young woman who unwittingly gets herself involved with a criminal family, with a young man who's part of a criminal family. And that's where her problem starts. She ends up in trouble, and she deals with it in the wrong way, which affects her whole life after that. 1 minute, 1 second, a split second decision affects the rest of her life. So I got this idea for the story, wrote the short story, and then I kept thinking, in your head, these things are rolling around. So what happened next? So I had another story idea, and that became eventually an idea for a whole novel.
Okay.
So I wrote that novel, which is actually book 4 in the
Book four.
series,
Yeah. Okay.
not thinking of it being a series, just thinking of that. Okay, it was a short story. It was an
Yeah.
idea, and it was a short story. And maybe there's another short story. And I actually wrote a couple more short stories, but I never had like an overall idea of, oh, this is
Okay.
going to be a series. It's going to start here and end up here. And the bits and pieces are going to fit together. Started with that one idea. I ended up with this book and then got thinking, well, what happens next? There's still, it's not, the story hasn't really finished. So I wrote the sequel.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, done. But then that's where I went backwards. No, she has a whole backstory
Yeah. Okay.
where I started when she was a teenager. Something happened to her.
Yeah.
And that's so important to her overall story. I need to go back and fill that in. And so that's where I went back. And after I wrote what is book 5 of this series, I wrote what is actually book 2 of the series. And then I went back and wrote this one, which is book 1 of the series, The Dead Lie.
Wow.
And then I went forward in the middle and filled in with book 3 of the series. So I didn't have a plan how this is all going to fit together, but except for in my mind, I would come up with ideas and then I would say, okay, so this goes here. And then, so I have all these books in no particular order. Not sure how they all connect together at all, if they do, except it's the same character going through different things in her life at different times, resulting from this traumatic experience from the story. And then when
Wow.
my agent and my publisher got hold of this, they're like, they knew what to do with it. They said, we need to put this in order. Obviously, start here, right?
Yeah.
And let's do it chronologically. And it makes so much sense. Into a writer's mind like mine, it didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't have no sense for it. I just wrote what inspired me and what I felt like writing and what the ideas came, as the ideas came to me, I just wrote it, not really thinking, how's it all going to connect? She'll do this, and then we can do a prequel, and then we can do another sequel, and all
Yeah.
over the
Yeah.
place. But my publisher said, yes, this is great, but let's do it this way in a logical order. So now as I'm going back, so it's this revision. I had to revise the first book because in the first book, I had her as a young adult with the traumatic experience not having happened yet, I think. I can't even
Okay.
remember because I revised it so many times. And now she's 11 years after the fact is where
Okay.
this book starts. So it had to be not rewritten, but revised, had to be some changes made. So in a book, there are so many revisions and so many edits that are done before you get to the final product. So that's the first one. So now as I'm going on to the second one, so I understand, okay, this is what's happened in this one now. I need to make sure as I go forward and do that editing that all the bits and pieces connect
Yeah.
better than connected before. So that all comes later on with the editing, I'd say.
Is that original short story out there in the world for people?
It is actually, but the short story, because I've made changes to her story since I wrote the short story that inspired Lana's story,
Okay.
it doesn't quite line up. The things that happen to her aren't exactly
Yeah.
the way that they happen in the book. But yes, it's been published it was published several years ago in a online magazine.
Okay. There you go. I love that. It'd be curious to read that as well, just to kind of get like the origin story of maybe how this all started. That's gonna be
Mhm.
maybe some people listening to this be like, I didn't know there was a short story that I could go find. So is that
Right.
available through your website at all?
It's not.
Okay.
It might be something in the future that I will have as kind of an extra, possibly.
Okay. Awesome. I love that. If your main character were to walk in the room right now, sit down in front of you, would you have any questions for them? Or reverse, what do you think they would say to you as the author? Can you kind of give us a little insight into them?
Oh, she would be really sick and tired of all of the problems and situations and
Yeah.
issues that I present her with.
Hmm.
And she'd say, enough, I really can't take any more of
Yeah,
this.
that's enough.
Please stop. But to make it interesting as a writer, though, your character has to go through a lot. Otherwise, it's just a boring, mundane story of their, you know, she has a life. And so I could write about her new life where she's up north. And I mentioned this a few times. She's up north and she has a couple of kids. She lives a blissful existence as a mother and a wife, a part-time reporter. She bakes cinnamon buns. She has a lovely home.
Hmm.
Everything's just perfect.
Yeah.
That wouldn't make for much of a story and certainly not much of a series if that's what her everyday life was like. So that's the ideal life that she wants to live, and she is trying to live that. But unfortunately, I don't allow her to sit back and live that
Hmm.
perfect life. So I keep throwing these obstacles in her way and keep reminding her, you did this, you have to make some repercussions and you need to redeem yourself. You need to
Yeah.
do something about that. Going forward, you can't go back, but going forward, you need to do better. You have to remember what you've done and learn from it. And by the way, other people aren't going to forget either. So they're going to keep popping up and causing you some problems in your life, give you some grief because of that. So, yeah,
Amazing.
so I'm sure she would not be happy with what I've done to mess up her life, I guess.
Amazing.
The other way
Amazing.
around, what would I say to her?
Yeah.
Um, I think she's very strong and I think she can take it. Um, I'm amazed with the things that she's gone through
Yeah.
and how she's been able to, stand up and brush herself off and just keep going forward. And I really admire her motivations, protecting her children. That's her top priority. Um, I admire her for her bravery and for marching ahead and trying to do better and putting that behind you, because as much as it hurts her and she doesn't want to even think about it, she has to grow from it, right? She has to grow from that experience and learn and do better. So I think she's very brave, and I think she has. I admire her motivation and admire her strength and courage and being able to go forward, do as much good as she can in the world, and protect her family. So that's what I would say to her.
Wow. I love it. Okay. I have one more question for you, but before I ask that, tell everybody where to go to connect with you. Tell them about the website and where you're most active on social media so people can connect with you.
Well, I would say on the website. So the social media is on the when you get past the newsletter page, and the newsletter is a great way because I put that out, as I say, quarterly, and give you quite a bit of information about myself there if you're interested in finding out what inspires me. In terms of social media, the bar is up at the top of the first page there to connect with me on. I'd say Instagram, Twitter, Facebook are great spots to see what I'm up to. I try to post, not if not daily, sometimes more than once a day, but if not daily, every other day, I try to post something about what's going on with the writing or just in my life in general.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's great. The one question I have for you at the end is just anything that you can offer up to an author that's listening, that's looking at writing a series like you're doing. Again, everything has to work for you personally, but in general terms, if there's some kind of wisdom that you can share with somebody new that's just starting the process of writing a series, any
Mhm.
tips that you would have liked to have heard yourself back on the beginning of this step that we can share with someone?
Well, I think it's a big learning process, and as I say, it's different for everyone.
Yep.
One thing that really resonates with me, and I hadn't heard this at the beginning, and wish I had, and that is um, the fact that a blank sheet isn't going to do you any good. So you can't edit a blank paper. You have to start somewhere.
Yep.
So, and I think that's the lesson for life in general. If there's something in life you want to do, you have to go out there and do it. I mean, it's that simple, really. So you have to start with, as I said, there needs to be a spark, there needs to be an idea, something which maybe comes from your background experience or something that you've heard about or watched or seen or whatever. So you take that one little thing, that's your start. Get it down on paper. Maybe it's part of a list of just some ideas. Maybe it starts with a sentence, whatever, but you need to start somewhere. So get something down, get some ideas up here, get them down on paper, make a start. So whatever you want to do, go ahead and just plunge in there and start, right? Get a start on it. So
Great.
that would be the advice I would give to anybody starting out writing anything at all. I don't know in terms of the series writing. Again, I think it's get those ideas down. So as you're thinking of things, I forget things, so I need to write them down. So
Yeah.
make a list of things as they come to you. And even if it's not going to be perfect, or if it's not in order, as mine weren't in order, that's okay. You can go back and fix that later. That's where the editing comes in. So get the ideas down, whatever you think your character might be involved with or what might happen to them, whatever dialogue they might be having, just whatever pops in your head, write it down and later start popping it in. Where does it fit in? And you'll need a character arc. So you want to make sure that as you write the first book, there has to be so much more there. You can't say, okay, my character, you've solved the problem. You're done. Your life is perfect now. There always has to be something underlying there that needs to be gone back to,
Yep.
so that can be the next book in the series. So some problem, some issue, some event, something that's happened to the characters, something about the characters, about their life, their background, something that they have an issue with. So, for instance, in my other series that I have, the first book coming out in October, it's called "Where's My Husband?" The main character there, she has a big issue with anxiety. So everything that happens to her, she overreacts to everything, which it turns out that she has a reason to overreact, but that's part of her personality. So there's always some issue or some problem or some background, some event that has not been resolved within one book. And that's where you're able to carry it on and put them in a different situation with that unresolved issue or that problem or that event. It's still there in the background. It's not taken care of yet. So put them in a different situation now, give them a different problem and see what happens. And that leads to continuing on the series.
Wow. Okay. IvankaFear.com is the website. We'll have links in the show notes. Make sure you go there and subscribe to the newsletter and go follow Ivanka on all of her social media locations. Can I prop the door for you and keep the door open for you to come back in the future and talk about the other books as they come out and new series and new endeavors? Is that okay that you come back in the future?
I would love to do that. That'd be great. Thanks so much.
As a first-time guest on a podcast, you were amazing, just so you know. The quality of the content you've given, the advice, the insight, your passion for what you do just radiates from you as you talk. And I just have to tell you, you did such an amazing job on the podcast. Thank you for making time to be here with us and to give us so much great value. I think anyone that picks up your book is going to love it. And let's go back to the original thing we talked about reviews. Please give Ivanka a review of her books as they come out and support our authors by giving your feedback, because others people that come to these sites to purchase books, they read your feedback and they'd love to get your insight into Ivanka's work. And I just think it really helps everyone. So everyone listening, when you buy the book, because I know you're going to, make sure you leave a great review for Ivanka as well, because that really does help. Ivanka, thank you for being part of Living the Next Chapter.
Well, thank you so much. It's been great to be here.
You're a great example of someone who is living the next chapter in everything you're doing. So You're a perfect fit for my show, and I'm so happy to have you here. Thanks for being here.
That's great. Thank you.
Awesome. Jumping here at the very end, I want to thank you for coming. We have listeners around the world, and I got to tell you, as a podcaster, it is so great to hear back from the people who listen to the show. Now, you are still here. The podcast's over. Like, we're sweeping up and putting the chairs away. You're still here. So, hi. I would love to talk to you. No, I really, really would. I would love to hear your voice. I would love to hear from you through email. You can do all that at livingthenextchapter.com. I say it fast because I love it. Living the Next Chapter. It's the name of the podcast. .com. How's that for easy? Right? Right. So come on over there and let's have a conversation. You can set up time in my calendar. You can, air quote here, book. Book time in my calendar. Book next chapter. Let's have a conversation. Thanks for being here. See you on the next one. Cheers.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.